basically it's all about value for the users and then for the company. If there's no value and I just have a
But in
nice,
that order, like
yeah, so if I have a nice mock-up and I want to have that feature and no one cares, why should we invest time and no one will use it? So that's very important.
welcome to the Product Quest podcast. Thank you for joining us on our journey to better understand innovation and product strategy. My name is Jan Vermut, and joining me, as always, my co-hosts Jonathan Edwards and Scott Burleson. Our guest today is Wolfram Nagel, Senior UX Designer at Teamure. I think it's fair to say that Wolfram has been in UX before it was cool and has worked in many different companies as well and as a free UX freelancer. He's published a book on multi-screen UX design. He's the co-founder and main curator of designmethodsfinder.com. He's a public speaker and regularly publishes insightful articles on wolframnagel.medium.com. In addition to that, the likelihood to meet him at a Jobs to be Done or UX meetup is quite high, and that's a compliment. So he's always a good addition to all of these events. So today we'll take a deep dive into how UX and Jobs to be Done kind of relate and why they are hopefully a match made in heaven. So Wolfram, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks a lot for inviting me. It's an honor to be here, and I'm looking forward to it.
Very great. Okay. We've talked about this before, so it seems like we're now in this position, and I really like this, that we starting to have listeners on the podcast. So I think that's a very nice, nice.
Actually, yes. I didn't manage to listen to all the episodes yet, but they are
Yeah,
still on the list. Yeah, and
that's nice to know. Okay,
yeah,
so maybe if you could start a little bit with explaining a bit what UX is. I mean, that's a term that it has kind of really hyped up more and more. There are UX positions everywhere, so and UX designers everywhere. But still, so could you elaborate a little bit what it actually is that you do? What does a UX designer do, and what is UX maybe in the broadest sense?
yeah, sure. I will do that. So, first of all, I need to make clear that there are different definitions out there, and maybe some people disagree somehow, not in general, but there are slightly different definitions. So my definition, actually, I also introduced this to my colleagues since 3 years now, is that UX is user experience. So UX is user experience, and it's basically defining how a user's experience is with a solution, a product, a service, whatever, and it covers a lot of different roles. So when I came across that many years ago, I also didn't understand what it is. There are different roles out there. What means what? And I found with the help of other sources the definition. So it's from beginning is what does a user need? What is a user? What are user needs? How do they use the product? So that's basically done and solved with the user research or UX research. And then it also has a lot to do with how the service looks like in the end, how content is structured. So you can only start with a interface, visual interface, UI, or also audio interfaces when you know about the content that needs to be communicated. So this relates to UX as well. UI, and if you talk about visual, so it's the layout relates to that, UI design, for example,
Yeah.
and also separated but overlapping visual design, also important, but it's not UI itself, in my opinion. You can do a UI without caring about
Yeah.
colors and the details. This is visual design then. Very often it's the same, but you can separate it. And also how users interact with the product. So interaction design goes into that direction.
Yeah.
And so this covers the whole thing from what a user need, what are the users, what do they need, what content and features and functionality can we deliver, how does this look like, how does it look like in general, how is it organized, how is it structured, the content, information architecture,
Yeah.
and how can it be used in the end. So that's my definition of UX. Not to
Yeah.
forget, maybe you all know that Venn diagram, the business perspective and the technology perspective. So if it's not feasible, my mock-up is worth nothing. So
Yeah.
that's my definition in a
Yeah.
nutshell.
That's very interesting. So I like that in the end you put in this. There is kind of an additional layer of business and aspect. I mean, you're this for companies. There's also, I think, in your writing, very often you make this connection, and it's a term that appears very often is to value. So that there is somehow UX needs to create stuff that has value. Is that fair to say? Or
That's, I mean, that's the overall goal, and that's what I'm telling everyone when we talk about UX and products and whatever. If there's no problem out there, no need, no job, this which can be addressed with a specific solution or UI or whatever, there's no value. So, and what we want to do, we want to create value for our users or customers. And if we don't do it completely wrong, we also create indirectly or directly or automatically value for the company, because then users use our product, they pay for it, they buy it, and so on. So if there's no, so it's basically, it's all about value for the users and then for the company. If there's no value and I just have a
but in
nice,
that order, like
yeah, so if I have a nice mock-up and I want to have that feature and no one cares, why should we invest time and no one will use it? So that's very important.
yeah.
And this also influences then the business perspective, right? So
yeah, in what sense? So
just if my mock-up looks nice, I like it. If it's not feasible and if there's no value for users, it doesn't make sense. That's it.
Yeah. So that's quite a high level perspective. I think like a high level perspective that you need to have as a UX designer, and covering all these different perspectives. So I would be really interested in of course, I mean, we basically said we're not a Jobs to be Done podcast, but I think it turns out to be a rather important topic. So how does UX for you and Jobs to be Done relate? How do you bring these two together? You mentioned it a little bit already in how you explain UX, basically.
For me, since I came across Jobs to be Done many years ago, it's the base for good UX. You can use other frameworks and mindsets and approaches. But Jobs to be Done, I mean, we talk about what is the job of a user and what are the underlying needs. And that's what we want to solve and to address, the most important needs we want to address. And by doing this, by having this in mind, this is the base for everything that comes next. So any UI, any idea, any feature we have in mind is based on the needs we are going to address. That's why Jobs to be Done, for me, since I know about Jobs to be Done, I cannot do UX anymore without that Jobs to be Done support thing.
That's nice. I think it is. Oh yeah, go on, John. Oh, you're on.
So, interaction design UI is a part of UX, right? So
for me,
yeah. And so, what do you start with in a UX? Let's say approach. What are the first steps?
So I need to understand the users, where it's coming from. So we when normally, or that's often how it happens, someone comes to you and I need that. Often it's a feature, right? So you put features on a roadmap, and I often use the example with a bridge. Someone comes to me and, Wolfram, please, we need a bridge in 2 weeks, 2 months, whatever. And then I say, okay, but I can't do that bridge. So I don't know what kind of bridge you need. Why do you need it? What are we going to solve? What are the users? What will be the users of that bridge? What's the context? What's their job? Okay, the job is crossing the river, for example, right? And then I need to know, is it a large group of people? How often do they cross the river? Only once, and so on. And then maybe we do not even need the bridge. Maybe we can swim across the river, or we can build a raft or whatever. That's the metaphor I very often use. And that's, so that's how I explain it, if that makes sense.
I think that's a great service to whoever requested the bridge. I've worked with a lot of different designers, and I wish they would ask me those questions. But it's more common that they go to the color and the fonts and the sort of, to me, what are like, I hate details, but it's like, but it doesn't matter how beautiful it is if I can't get across the river. Right.
Exactly.
You know.
Yeah. So if I would have been in San Francisco last week and someone comes to me, I need a bridge, I would build something like Golden Gate Bridge. I don't know, right?
Yeah.
So, but I was in the woods in the on the weekend. Maybe it would be a wooden bridge, but both are bridges. So, but both are nice. But I need to know what the bases are. I never previously, maybe I did also jump too early into the solution space and, oh, let's do the mock-up. But I cannot create any mock-up or even create ideas in a project when I don't know why we are doing this, what is the goal, what is the job, what are the users, what is the need. So that's the base. That's why. And I use jobs to be done. That helps me to get started, to clarify the basic information for me to do that.
That's really interesting.
Usual
That
UI
sounds,
stuff.
it sounds almost like this is, I mean, and you mentioned that like there is a life as a designer before jobs to be done and one after. So at one point and then you cannot go back in a certain sense, but it almost sounds like it is, now the way you described it is also, it helps you against kinds of biases. So last week I saw maybe some kinds of solution I had, or I listened in on a sales conversation or whatever, and that's what I have in mind, and that's what I'm going to build. But maybe that's the completely wrong solution. So it sounds like it also helps you almost against biases in a certain sense.
Yeah, sure. So I don't wanna have the solution in mind. Rather, I have the problem in mind. So, and then several solutions come across me, and I can connect these to, or these potential ideas or solutions to the problem or the need or the how. Doesn't matter how you want to call it. If you want to call it job or problem, I don't care on a higher level.
Yeah.
But that's what I need to know. That's what we want to solve, and we need to align on that with my colleagues, product owner, product managers, other stakeholders, whoever. We need to align on. So I'm overusing that term and phrase, but we need to align on the job. If this is clear and if we know about the needs, so let's prioritize the right. There are hundreds of needs. Can we please pick the 5 to 10 that we define as relevant based on whatever data and insights we gather, and then let's go.
Okay.
Yeah, there's this old designer phrase, form follows function, which it seems to be it seems to be very consistent with jobs to be done, right? And like before we figure out what it looks like, what the fonts are, what the colors are, is it a radio button, is it a slider or whatever, like follows function, which is really just another way of what should it be doing and for who. Once we determine what function it should accomplish, then we can make it pretty.
Correct. And this jobs to be done framework or way of thinking helps me to. It's easy to explain that a form follows function, which is just a phrase. Makes sense, maybe, but with the tools and the jobs to be done stuff around, it's tangible, right? So you can really work with that.
I wanted to come back to the experience part of user experience. How does this? How can we frame an experience in terms of jobs? This is probably not a. I don't know if this is an easy question to answer, but is an experience a kind of job, or is it? How does one create a good experience? Maybe this is not the right definition of a user experience. Maybe that's not what people mean when they talk about user experience. But just the word experience to me. I'm wondering, okay, what is it? What makes a good experience? What is a good experience of doing something?
That's a very good question. Hard to answer. Actually, some people, experienced people say even you cannot design an experience. Maybe maybe that's right. But that's maybe another topic. But the experience in general is, so when I use a product, how do I feel? Does it help me? Do I get better? Can I get something done faster, easier, cheaper? I don't know. And experience And user experience has a lot to do with psychology. So how do I feel when I use a product? Or you can actually influence the perceived performance of a product. It's just an example by simulating that it's faster than it actually is. So a nice loading bar, or I don't know, maybe there comes a choke up while the loading takes so long, there's a choke, and you do not even realize that it takes 2 minutes compared to the one which only shows me a loading bar for 30 seconds, which takes ages. So it feels like it takes ages. So that's the experience, and that's what can be influenced by understanding psychology, understanding psychological details of your users. There are different types of users, which goes into neuroscience, neuromarketing. I got into that some years ago, also when I wrote my book. And maybe also emotional jobs go also in that direction. So that's what you need to consider. And how do users feel when they use a product? That's my experience. Does it make sense? Do I like the product? Does it look good? So visual design plays an important role. For example, when I have two products, you can only compare when they have the same functionality. So when they do exactly the same, two products, and the one looks better. I don't say that it's objectively the nicer one, but I think I like that more because, I don't know, rounded buttons, the color is nice, white space, well-adjusted components and stuff. This also influences the experience. And security, do I feel secure when I use that email tool? Yes or no? And what about my data? All this relates to user experience and influences the experience. Is it good or bad?
I really like how you stress this, that it's perceived performance. So there's one element we can say, okay, this kind of, it's an engineering question. We can measure how long it takes until it loads or whatever. Engineering in the maybe stupid sense, but like we can, but it's about perceived performance. So that's what you want to design. So it makes me think of there are gas grills, and we once did a project on gas grills. And one of the issues that came up is that people who use those things, that they're afraid that the thing will explode, right? If you use fire and cold, it won't explode. It will just burn. But gas, there is this fear that could explode. Now, every engineer will tell you the likelihood that happens is it's like winning the lottery, something like that. So it's very unlikely that it will happen. But the perception of the people is, I am afraid that it will happen. So what the company did is they did a kind of a green light around the where you set the temperature, basically. And when it's green, it means the gas is flowing, everything is fine. But it's not a better grill in any technical sense, but the perceived performance is better.
It's funny because when you talked about this grill, what I expected, what you were going to say is that people enjoy fires more than the experience of a fire is someone people want. So the crackle of the flames, the light and everything. I mean, I would imagine that probably plays a role too.
Yeah. And this is again the bridge to jobs to be done, because you can you can say it will never explode, but if you research customers, talk to them, and you find out that there are needs, I fear that it will explode, and so this is only one customer, you do in qualitative research, but then you can also quantify it later, ask 100 or 200 others, and if this need got rated high, you need a solution that this fear is addressed. Maybe an indicator that tells you, no problem, you are safe. And that's the experience, psychology, qualitatively researched and quantified with the help of jobs to be done. And then you can also prioritize. And this is the most important need. We can win in the market if we get this fear done better than any other grill. And then we will win, because they buy that grill, that grill. And another example in that area, if you know your job performers or your personas or users, however, also psychology and UX plays an important role. Maybe there are some the hard guys that want to feel like I live in the woods and want to make fire. They would not buy that gas grill, right? They want to see the fire, and they want to use wood and whatnot. And others, maybe I tend to be like thinking in
City people like me, right? City
yeah.
people
So
like
yeah,
me,
city maybe
I have an electric grill, so that's
yeah.
like I'm
Take me. So I don't wanna smell like I was
yes,
standing in a fire. This is an important need for me. So
yeah,
maybe I will never buy that grill that uses wood. So I want to have that gas grill, for example. And
yeah,
this again, psychology, how do I feel, maybe emotional needs, whatever, can be
yeah.
researched pretty well and find out and quantified with jobs to be done. That's why this is the for me a must-have for UX. That's the reason.
That's nice way. Yeah,
So in terms of these tricks, I really like this idea. I'd never, funnily enough, never really. I had recognized these little psychological tricks, but I never really thought about it that much. But it's everywhere actually when you think about it. And one thing I definitely like a lot in the US and in other countries, and we don't do this in Europe, unfortunately, is traffic lights. When you're waiting for the traffic light in the US, there's a counter, and it's true that I'm quite impatient actually, and I always get a bit. When is this traffic light going to turn green? And just the fact that you have a counter, I think, really enhances the experience in a big way. And I was wondering, so how do you identify the places where you will use these kind of tricks? So in a project, when does it arise the time when you say, here we need a trick, or like I'm calling it a trick. I don't know if it's the right word, but
a solution.
So maybe it's a trick. Maybe it can also tend to be a dark UX pattern if you use that too much. So you need to be careful with that. I cannot really tell you when this turns out, but when you constantly talk to your users, and with each iteration, so normally we know our customers, we know what they need, and that's a solution. Fine. So always when I have my nice super mock-up click dummy ready, and I like intrinsically no, not intrinsically. I just want to. I'm ready to get a confirmation because it's so nice and a check mark, and then we can go to production. It always or very often happens. Oh, I was wrong because they behave differently,
Yeah.
and if you, but that's fine. That's okay, and that's design is never done. You can always improve and blah blah blah. But if you do that constantly, you show what you have, either the mock-up or the prototype, or you talk about the already published solution product which is out there, and you observe them, you talk to them, do interviews, whatever, test, and then you can find out these little problems or underserved needs or pains or fears, whatever. And then, okay, but it's qualitative. We should not jump onto a solution. So we need to fix this because this customer said it. But again, we use jobs to be done to, okay, this is sounds valid, reasonable. But now we have 50 of these needs. What do we do first? We quantify. I guess you, Jan, do it similarly. And it's pretty much coming from ODI, outcome-driven innovation. That's where I coming from. And that's so I read a lot about that, and it makes a lot of sense. So that's how you can quantify these needs. And then maybe this fear with the grill or something else is the most important one. So let's fix that first. Yeah. So, and then you have confidence when you ship your new grill with that green light, you have confidence that this will make sense. Because if you're like only idea driven, let's do that light and let's do this and that, I think that makes sense. We are convinced internally everyone likes it, but maybe not. But if you're qualified with 200 customers, then you can be more or less confident that this is not a waste of time, what you did.
Yeah. So my kind of question is around the. So I mean, we all understand that jobs to be done. So we want to find the right opportunities and rank the needs. I think that's really important. what I'm wondering is when do you decide to make a technical solution, and when do you go for a psychological trick? And I guess the answer is pretty obvious, that you would, if you can't change the product for some reason in a fundamental way, or there's some kind of just feasibility issue of actually solving this particular issue of time or whatever the problem might be, then you will try and use a trick. But beyond that, I was wondering, how can one get ideas about these tricks? So what are so we know the time one, are there any others, and how can one think about these? Say I have a problem with okay, something fairly generic like ease of use or something. A product is not easy to use. So is there some psychological thing to make people think it's easier to use? Or if there's, and I'm aware that easy to use is a bit of a generic term, but you see what I mean? It's when we have these outcomes, is there kind of a bag of tricks that we can go in and use, and of these psychological things, because as they're not logical somehow, I mean, these tricks are not very logical, they're just based on psychology. Is there, how does one use them and find them? I mean, that's the...
So maybe there's a bag of tricks. I don't have one, but what I would do if users tend to complain a lot about ease of use, for example, the ease of use is not tangible enough. So we need to find out.
Yeah, it's not tangible. Yeah,
but it's okay. They tell us your product is not easy to use. A lot of complaints. Okay, let's take that.
Yeah.
Go out, talk to them. Why? So, and then comes the jobs interview technique or open discussions. Why is it not easy to use? Yeah, because this or that. Okay, and why is this a problem? Yeah, because this or that. And what? Yeah, I want to do this. You want to do this, and la 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 la. And then at some point, you find out the needs, and you can. So that's how I do it normally. Did I get you right? You want to minimize the time it takes to get that grill running. I don't know. So, or you want to log into the product. Yes, you got me right. Okay, so logged in, and many other needs as well. And then this is still qualitative. I cannot really rely on that. We could, but I would quantify it. And the ones that got the highest rating, that's what we want to solve. The trick with the make it look like it's going fast or solve it with technology, I don't know. So the research part is the first part. You diverge, converge, you define the most important problems, pains, needs, whatever you're going to solve, and then you go into solution space. And many solutions are allowed. Yeah? So you diverge and converge again. So a lot of ideation, brainstorming, talk to your developers or product people. And then you have a lot of ideas. So we could solve it with technology. Good idea. Let's check if it's feasible. Maybe it's not feasible. Then can we at least improve how they perceive the speed of this specific step? Yeah. And can we bring in a joke? It takes not that long, or whatever, or a spinner, and keep them informed, or just say, oh, sorry, this takes long because we have to compile a lot of data. Maybe they already accept this excuse. We are open, and we tell them, and we check afterwards if we improve that problem. And that's how I would approach it. So I have no bag of tricks, but this trick is actually also just a solution to a problem or to need. Can be done with a trick, can be done with technology, can be done, I don't know.
Yeah.
In this example, is it fair to say your first attempt, if the need is to get it done faster, to get this to process faster, that your first ideas are actually, let's make it faster. But then when you sort of bump against the limit, okay, we've done as well as we can to make it faster in reality, something we can measure. Now, how can we additionally work on the perception of time? Am I following that correctly?
Yeah, so that's how I would phrase it as well. Yeah.
It reminds me, this is not a digital example, but like you go to an amusement park, like Disney World in the United States that has very long lines. It's one of the biggest complaints. But one of the things they'll do is they'll have entertainment along the queues, games for the children to play. They have little games where you interact with the phone, with whatever things are physically around you. Again, because certainly if the children are screaming, that's going to so your perception of time can go the other way too, right? If everything's really miserable, you can perceive it to take a lot longer than it's actually taking.
Yeah. And it actually it can turn to the opposite when children know about this stuff around the when they have to wait, and they are maybe disappointed next time they go there and there's no queue,
right?
So they will miss that entertainment, right? So then you know, okay, this is a good solution because they are disappointed. They need to go to that thing directly without waiting.
All right.
Yeah.
What I like about this approach is that we're thinking about these two realms. One is how can we solve the problem in a measurable way, in an objectively measurable way, but then we're not done. Now, how can we also address maybe this is where the design comes in. How can we reinforce or maybe address shortcomings of our design, of how well we could objectively move it to impact the perception?
Yeah,
I like it.
I want to get to maybe this you have a more conceptual. So there was this instance where I said, well, and then la 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 la, I do the thing, but I think there is a lot of work that goes into that, and you have kind of a whole framework basically around it. And now we're talking about, I think maybe you call this the phase where stuff gets materialized. So when we solution, and you use this, I think that's a beautiful word to use, where you say it's something materializes in there. So could you maybe expand a little bit on your general framework that you have? I think you call this the customer-centric value creation framework, and what that is?
Yeah. So shall I share the framework? I have a
sure.
I can show it. So maybe the ones on that listen only cannot see it, but I can share my screen.
All the more reason for folks just listening to go find our YouTube channel, Product Quest Podcast.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. So do you see it?
Yes.
Okay. You see my screen, right? Okay.
Yep.
So that's basically the framework you're talking about. So that's the high level view. You maybe recognize some terms from design thinking or other frameworks. So we didn't do it from scratch, but it's aligned with our approach, with our mindset. So that's why we did this. And the detailed version looks like this. You maybe recognize the double diamond. Looks more complex than it actually is. We use this to explain what we are doing. And so we have like 3 phases. We have the first. So if people know, I'm pretty sure people know the double diamond. So these are the first circles in our framework, and the framework actually explains research and development. The first circle, or the first diamond, you guys all know, is the first the research phase. So understanding the user, and in that area we use jobs to be done. So doing the qualitative research and quantifying in the end, and then make a decision and prioritize the needs we are going to solve. That's the first part. Then you can go into the ideation, exploration phase, think about solutions. How can we address these needs? Is it feasible? And so on. And once this phase is done, so you decide on, you do a click dummy and test it, or I'm thinking from a software perspective, but with other products, it's you can do it the same way. So once you decide, that's the new feature, that's a new product that makes sense. Never forget where you're coming from, the initial need and problem you're going, or the job you're going to solve. Once this is decided, it goes into the development phase, so materializing the stuff. So you come from the need, you find ideas and solutions for the most relevant needs, you decide on the one solution or feature, and then it goes into, can be agile development, or I don't care, any other. So we use build, measure, learn, agile and Scrum, but you can also attach any other development approach to that. and then you just develop what has been defined and designed based on the quantified and research needs. That's pretty much in a nutshell. So double diamond plus another one, similar to what Zendesk does, which is then the materializing phase. And all these, around each of these, I'm explaining for the ones who only listen, around each of these 3 diamonds, there's a circle, which means this circle is independent, so I can research all the time without caring about the exploration design phase and the materializing phase. But when I got, and also I can design and create a better idea and better solutions independent of the research in the materializing phase, and same with the materializing phase. But once we got a new result from one of these diamonds or circles, I can hand it over to the next one. So we do some research, and the world changed. Maybe like in March 2020, the whole world changed and needs got rated a bit different. So everyone was at home and so on. And then you find that out, new insights, new important needs or problems or pain points to solve, and you can hand it over to the design phase. Work on a design. Maybe you have time pressure, maybe not. It can take a week, or you can take 1 year. I don't care in that sense. Once you have a decision, this solution makes sense, addresses the need we found out, then you can hand it over to the materializing phase. Put the stuff into the backlog if you work in Scrum and stuff, and then just work on this and materialize the solutions. So 3 circles or 3 diamonds: research, design, development. That's basically it. And we use that framework. Sorry,
I love about this that's different than a lot of processes you see is, well, we commonly see the double diamond, right, where we diverge and converge. But if I'm looking at the sort of the 3 major phases, the first one's about understanding, in which we uncover needs. The next one is about exploring, in which we define solutions. And then we say materialize, where we're developing or commercializing that solution. But what really jumps out at me is within understand, you have a cycle. It's not just going, you're not diverging, converging, and you're complete. You're still cycling around. So, and you do the same for explore and the same for materialize. I wonder if could you tell us a little bit about why that's a cycle as opposed to, just going straight from understand to explore?
So you can go straight, fine, and double diamond is a great framework, but I would say it's not done. So I can do research all the time. So, or maybe I'm a rather generalist, so I do the research and the exploration phase, and my colleagues as well. But maybe there's a research department. They can do that. I mean, they do the whole day nothing else than doing research, and they can inform the exploration part, the designers, the developers. I don't know who's responsible in a specific company. They can inform them, look, we found out the needs we had before. We found out 5 important needs. People fear with that gas grill that it explodes. We found, maybe you didn't know before, or we started with an assumption for the first iteration and with the MVP or whatever you created. Now we found out that this is an issue. Maybe this issue can even appear based on the first iteration you released, and then a new need appeared, or a new pain point appeared, or problem or fear, whatever. We found out that this is now the order of problems. Maybe you solved the other problems already well enough, so no need to improve that feature even more. It's addressed good enough, so fine. Do not over engineer it, so you wouldn't make any more money because it's solved well enough, and no one would pay more money for an even better feature. So, but now we found out there's another need, another problem, or the new primary problem, however you call it, and then you can inform the exploration phase, and I can design the whole day, and nothing will be released because the backlog is full. They have no time to pick something from there, and it's already too important. But then, I mean, I can push, or they can pull from the previous phase. So that's, and I mean, in one sentence, design is never done. Product is never done. There's always room for improvement. That's why I think these circles make sense.
Yeah.
So I have to say I really like this, and I really also, just to expand on what Scott was saying, I really like the use of the loops and making this explicit. In this old theory of let's say the origins of AI and all this, people there was this theory called cybernetics, and in cybernetics people talk a lot about feedback loops. And the idea being that we basically hone in on an objective or a goal through feedback of observation, and then changing course. And then by doing this repeatedly, we can reach some kind of goal or objective. And I had my question is, what is the so maybe for listeners, so we have these three phases: understand, explore, and materialize. Each of these phases is a loop in itself, and then we have wider loops going around that can be so wider loops going around these. My question here is, so the understand phase, which is the one that where we hone in on the user needs. How do you, what prompts you to go another way around the circle? So what prompts you to say, now there's what's the feedback you get that where you think, the user needs, we need to go back round at this and do the process or repeat some part of the process?
Maybe I wouldn't say that we need to do another round. We just do it constantly, and maybe it depends also on the following phases. Maybe they need some insights and they need to design now. So we now need to know the insights. We need to design a new solution, whatever. So there's a deadline, and for example. So you do that constantly, but it could also be so, and maybe you don't have enough data yet. So data, I call data everything, any kind of information, customer feedback. I'm not confident enough. We only had 30 participants in that survey, and I don't trust that. And maybe we have 500 participants, but it doesn't make sense. So I'm not. However, so let's do it again. So it's allowed to do it again. But maybe you cannot because you need to deliver, then still deliver. So that's what we know now. Maybe it's also based on assumptions. Maybe we don't have even time. So I'm pretty pragmatic, and we also are pretty pragmatic because you never have the time you want to invest. Maybe I only have 1 week because there's some pressure. No real time to talk to customers. Let's do it it's not super scientifically correct, but no time. So let's do an internal workshop. We know our customers somehow. Let's do with a heterogeneous group, some developers, product managers, some colleagues from support, maybe a stakeholder, a manager, a designer, another designer. Let's discuss what are the needs of these people, and then no scientific quantification. Let's prioritize in a pragmatic way. Let's vote for the needs. So these are the needs we know so far. Let's vote. Or also when you do research, these are the votes we got so far. Let's vote or quantify, however, and then go to the next round. But there's more, and just do it constantly. And whenever you got new insights, maybe we started with the wrong assumption. And when you get a new insight and, the world changed completely and we were wrong, which is fine. We are agile, fast and lean and so on. Then change. And I don't say that you should fail fast and try a lot of stuff and hope that one solution wins. But sometimes you don't have enough time to do your research as you would like to, or to do proper research. And you need to deliver something. So for whatever reason, then that's fine. So you're never done, but so maybe.
Or I don't know if you experience these, but we have that sometimes you kind of, you come into a project and it's middle of development, right? They started, they already went, and suddenly doubts come up, or are we going into the right direction, or there's 700 ideas now, what do we do? But the app's there, like they're not going to go backwards. And then so I really like this emphasis on the two things, on this pragmatism, like the world is as it is, like corporate reality is as it is. Sometimes there's deadlines, and that's just what it is, and we have to work a way around it. So because that would have been one of my questions, like, okay, that's the framework, but what's the reality? And then I like this pragmatism. So this is where you orient yourselves. And one, I think one thing that we should really emphasize is we're really used to continuous development when it comes to the solution space. So everybody immediately agrees, yes, we should do this continuously and always improve, and blah, blah, blah. That seems to be like a given. But it's new to talk about this in the research part.
So that was my point. Yeah, exactly.
And I really like this emphasis that is let's continuously do this. Some companies have done this all the time, but mostly it's a one-off kind of thing. And I really like this emphasis on why not talk all the time to your users, like have this continuously.
100%, Jan. That's the thing that jumps out at me too. And the other thing is, if you've done a jobs to be done study, you ultimately get a list of prioritized needs. But then your question is, well, okay, here's the thing that's number one, number two, number three. Well, why are those number one, number two, number three? And what are the root causes that are making these problems? In other words, you finish the research and you generate new questions. Now you go back to your qualitative. Maybe you've got a sense of those. But the point is, you have new questions. It's almost, you need and if there's a lot, and what happens in practice, there's often a lot of time pressure. Hey, we have to hurry up and come up with ideas and launch the most brilliant thing. Maybe with Wolfram's map, maybe there is a decision and it goes forward. But I love the idea of saying, you know what, now let's dig into these new questions. What are now we've learned a lot of things. That doesn't mean we know everything. We've learned a lot of things. Okay, now what are the root causes of these top things? Are there new contexts? Anyway? So I really love that idea of the continuous learning on the customer needs side.
Yeah, I think you can always get more insights, right? And what you mentioned, Jan, with the project, I also worked in project, or I came to a new team or to a new project which was already running. I cannot go there, tell 10 people, guys, stop.
Exactly.
Now we do 2 months of research.
Break. That's right.
I'm the new research hero and wait for me. This is not working. But I work on that. So I try to get pragmatic. What is the job we are going to solve? Are some needs clear? Who are the users? Fine, let's go with that based on some assumptions. And in the meantime, I did my research. So maybe a bit too late, but early enough for the next iteration. And that's fine. And then I can bring in that later. Also, in the meantime, we have a lot of insights from earlier surveys or research activities. And I jumped into we got a new product. Solution was somehow defined already. I was able to go back to our previous jobs to be done research and needs. And so this is a usual thing. Maybe you also experienced that. I had to search for the problems for that solution. So
re-engineer the problem.
Yeah, and there were problems. So, but I was able to deliver them, and also even deliver them with some numbers. So this is an underserved need. And so I can back up the product owner or whoever. So you're on a good way, but maybe we should move a bit into that direction because we forgot to consider that need. So we can, with the next iteration, we can still, if the solution is already defined, you can adjust with the new insights I got in the meantime, or I picked from earlier research. So this framework looks complicated and very strict and dogmatic, and it's actually the opposite. It just tells us that's how it should be. And we can look, we are here right now. We didn't do this. So it's just to remind us. And it's the practical approach is very pragmatic.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is, as you mentioned, a pragmatic approach. And this is a guide for you to go through the projects. Yeah. I still wanted to look a bit more at this first phase, because one thing that is one of the core tenets of jobs to be done, for example, well, not for example, one of the core tenets of jobs to be done is this idea, which is, I think, quite a powerful idea, of the fact that jobs are stable in time and needs are stable in time. And I always wondered really about this. And I just want to say that I think there really is something to this. So just to be clear, I'm focusing on the first phase, the understand phase, and the loop there is in understand. And I agree with you, actually, but I'm just trying to tease out the difference. So where does this differentiate with the jobs to be done thing? Because the jobs to be done says, okay, you do the research, you have all the needs and everything, it's fixed, and you're good to go for the next 10 years. Okay, I'm just kind of exaggerating a bit, but you see what I mean. You can now go and develop solutions, etc., and you're good to go, and you have this golden document that you don't need to touch anymore. And I think that somehow seems wrong to me. But I wondered what you could say about this, and maybe we can look at an example or something, maybe with the grill. What would it look like to say, okay, we've done the research, we've understood, and now we're gonna go back again and reiterate this. What does that look like for you, and where is jobs to be done somehow maybe not capturing the full picture?
So I basically still agree with the jobs are stable over time and needs also. So when I have some general examples I also used to introduce, for example, listen to music. If I like to listen to music, it doesn't matter if I listen to LP or CDs or cassettes some years ago, or if I use a streaming service now. The importance, if I like listening to music, the importance of a specific need, basically, or of a job does not change. But the satisfaction can change. For example, when in March 2020, when Corona came up, the importance for a user to remotely connect to someone, if you're in that situation, it's important. But it got more relevant because the affected people are more, and therefore maybe you should prioritize that need a bit higher, and maybe also they realize that the satisfaction is, I don't know, went down, or the need was not that relevant. Maybe it got even more important, remotely connect to others. But in general, I would say if in a specific job for a specific type of user, the need or the job is there, this is valid for a long time. This does not change. It's independent of time, but the solutions can change, and also the solution landscape can change, the market can change, and maybe our good enough product is not good enough anymore because others got addressed that need even better than we. Now we need to adjust.
But I thought needs were solution independent in terms of jobs to be done. So this is where I find there's an interesting concept here, because we're saying that somehow there's not an independence here, because the needs change when something in the environment, including the other competition, so solutions, when solutions change, we have a change in needs here. So I just find that's an interesting.
I think that's a little bit more differentiated. I think there is two different things that maybe get mixed up together. So I think one is like exactly how Wolfram said it. So what changes isn't the need, but it's level of fulfillment, it's level of satisfaction. That's relative to solutions, and that changes over time because solutions improve. Like for example, I don't know, you mentioned music, right? Listening to music. For example, the interference to the sound quality because of the medium the sound is printed on. Well, that's a weird way to say that if you use a CD, sometimes you get hiccups, right? So that's still very important, so that it doesn't get the piece of music doesn't get interrupted due to some kind of these technical reason. Is still very important, but the degree of satisfaction has dramatically changed since I'm listening on a streaming device, for example. These kinds of hiccups don't happen anymore that often, so my satisfaction with these hiccups went up. So now improve kind of, so it's quite obvious now. If I'm a streaming service, I wouldn't go around trying to improve those moments when playing as a piece of music or getting interrupted, because that's solved. But the need is still very important, because if you don't care about this and suddenly you get interruptions, I get angry again as a customer.
Yeah,
and
so
then there is a different
yeah.
set of things that can change that are really this, and that's maybe the different level is this consumption chain related. So I think ODI would call this but Scott, you're more the expert, but consumption chain related. So really things like changing the battery or charging the battery of a device that's related to the consumption of a certain specific solution, right? So so
we're saying it's so consumption jobs might change,
they are solution,
but non-consumption jobs would not change, or satisfaction. I mean, I can see that satisfaction might change. I mean, we know of the Kano, what's it called now? Kano model. Kano model. So that makes sense to me.
Yeah, satisfaction will get recalibrated in a couple ways with the new technology. First, we're happier with the new technology, but over time we become recalibrated. Yeah. That becomes our expectation, and our satisfaction can go back down again. Yeah. So if you think about somebody's satisfaction with the I don't know. I mean, the time to here's a consumption one. Log onto the internet. The time to do that in 1998 took a long time. You had to do dial up, but you were quite happy because you couldn't even do it at all before.
But I mean, fundamentally, also, I mean, we say minimize in jobs to be done. We just want to minimize, and I think this is interesting feature also, that we don't actually define a specific. Like for requirements, we don't define a specific target for that. So if we say minimize, minimize, then there's a constant process. I don't need to redefine that outcome, because there's no value attached to it, specific value that's given. So so we're 1998 and I've minimized the time to log on, and now it's 2020 and I'm still minimizing, but I don't have to go and review that need.
I would, so maybe a question to you, Scott, as the ODI expert. So I would say importance does not change, is stable, but with the internet connection, satisfaction went up because it's now faster. And this need is not that relevant anymore, because there are maybe new needs come up with the new technology, and they are even more important. Then we get used to the speed of the internet, and the expectations get higher, and this need comes back, because 10 seconds is not good anymore. It needs to be milliseconds, whatever. And then this need is relevant, and that's why you should constantly. So the need is still there. And the importance also, I want to have minimize the time it takes to connect to the internet when I'm at home. I don't know.
Yeah.
And this is 1998. It was fine because I was able to connect. Later, it was super because it was faster. Then I got used to it, to the speed. And then I saw others are even faster. And then my satisfaction goes down again. Importance. Quickly connect to the internet, always the same importance. That's why the need is still stable, but other needs can come on top, or the need can get satisfied enough, or I'm not satisfied anymore, and that's why this need comes up. That's how I would. I don't know if I'm maybe Scott.
Makes sense to me. Makes sense to me.
Yeah, I think that was perfectly explained. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm really interested in another aspect of kind of something that's related to all of this. So this is very the technicality and how do you apply it and all that different kind of stuff. But in the article that you write on Medium, in this where you explain your model, the customer-centric value creation model, there is a whole aspect, and you emphasize this a couple of times, the effect that has on collaboration. And so if you don't mind, I want to quote. I mean, and I really like this. You said this. So this has a lot to do with so that's a quote. This has a lot to do with collaboration. To discuss possible solutions to a topic, everyone needs to understand the users and their needs. If you want to solve problems together and to have UX related and user-focused discussions at eye level, everyone in the team needs to have a basic customer-centric mindset. Now, I love this. So can you elaborate a little bit on how maybe something like Jobs has helped collaboration, why that is relevant?
Yeah, so I, as a designer or researcher alone, I'm, let's say, nothing, right? I need others. So, and when I come up with a solution, or let's take the bridge example again, I come up with a bridge to my developer who has to develop that bridge. And they might develop it and fine. But that's why we are teaching everyone on the customer-centric mindset and jobs to be done and what UX is and why we need what users are and so on. When my team knows about the user and the job we are going to solve, and for example, that bridge takes 2 months to release, but the next release and managers request an improvement for our customers already with the next release in 2 weeks, this bridge that I created that looks so nice takes 2 months or is not feasible. Maybe let's say it's feasible, but it takes too long. If my developer colleague or the PO or the QA, or I don't care, everyone knows about, that's actually what I meant at the beginning. I also need to know what the user is, what the problem is. So if otherwise I cannot create a mock-up for that bridge. And if they know why I built that bridge, so for 10 people to cross the river once in a lifetime, they never go back. The developer knows that. I cannot develop that bridge, but then he can come up with a solution. Let's build a raft together. I have my framework delivers a raft within 4 or 5 days. We even have 1 week left to test it. Let's do that raft. It also solves the job, cross the river, and maybe it's even good enough. So we can deliver in 2 weeks. Manager is happy, customer is happy. Let's check afterwards. We may not even need the bridge anymore, or we develop the bridge.
Away, kind of.
Or we develop, so bad for me because I like my bridge so much, or we develop it in the background, but we can deliver already a solution to the customer. And maybe that need is then already addressed good enough. And we have other needs more important. And okay, let's do other stuff. The backlog is full, right? So let's go with the raft. We release the raft. Customers are happy. Don't go to the competitor anymore. It's good enough. They complain, but that's okay. And that's why I need others. Also, I need to check, is this feasible? And I want to have these discussions at eye level with my colleagues, not just the designer tells them what the design is. So everyone is responsible for the experience. And also every line of code, you don't see the code. And my mockup looks so nice, but if it takes too long to load, whatever, it's not a good experience. We talked about experience before. So every line of code influences the experience. So that's why I rely on these guys. I also rely on the support colleagues. They do, actually support does research the whole day. They are not called researchers, but they talk 8 hours per day to customers. What I do when I organize a session with a customer, right? But not the whole day. I do other stuff also. So they are basically the real researchers, maybe, if they even have the right questions and know about jobs to be done. And maybe they can even provide some needs by having the right questions and unlocking these needs in the calls with the customers. They also influence the experience with our product. So I also need them. So that's why you cannot do that alone. I need the support guys, I need the developers. They need to materialize what I have in mind, and all the other colleagues. So, and we all need to think from the customer perspective, because yes, it works, done, check, no. Yes, it works. The function is there, but it takes too long. The label is not understood. Doesn't look good. Not well aligned. Other apps look better, and the perceived experience, the perceived quality with the product is not good enough. If developers know about that and how customers perceive the product psychologically and so on, we can do a better job. That's just I need them. We need each other. So they need my research and my design, and I need them to develop it. So that's how I see collaboration.
I love this idea. My question immediately goes to sort of how does this work in practice? Do the developers, do they participate in that understanding cycle with you?
Yes. So in the meantime, we train. So we as UX designers train and spread the UX mindset, what UX is. It makes sense. We use that bridge example and some other examples, which are quite convincing, I would say. Everyone says, oh, that makes sense. And we use that framework to teach it and some other stuff and examples. And this works. So, and when we, for example, when we start a new project or I come to the team, I do, and they never got into that. They never got that introduction. By the way, that introduction is done to every new R&D colleague since 3 years now. They all get the 1 hour full the UX jobs to be done mindset stuff.
Then mandatory mindset, customer mindset training.
Yes, exactly.
Good.
And then if this is not there, I do a quick introduction and tell them what UX is and I need you, blah, blah, blah. And then we do a workshop together. So everyone is invited to think from the customer perspective. So this is the job, this is the user, la, la, la. What can you imagine what their needs are? And that they think from the customer perspective. Later or already prepared, I bring in other needs. And then they have that perspective. And I can always go back to it. Do you remember the workshop? Do you look, this is the need. I just explain them what a need is and why it makes sense and so on. And that helps us to, and I always invite them to discuss with me, to collaborate. And I would say, yeah, it works. So, yeah.
I like this, how kind of this, almost like this external, I mean, the external perspective, the external customer perspective is the thing that you can use to rally around, like where everybody kind of can start to collaborate. So I really like this, I mean, how did you implement this at TeamViewer? I imagine, so I know of a lot of companies that would love to have something like that. So how did you get there?
So I've been in the UX field since many years now, and I always, that's a special thing for designers, I guess. You always, or researchers especially, you always have to explain what you're doing, why you're doing that, right? So I do research, and I remember more than 10 years ago in my previous company, we wrote an offer, research, and then development, and they just got back to us and they scratched out the research part. We don't need that. And then we did a trick. We just added more development time and still did the research, and then they accepted. So that weird, but yes. So, and I learned it, I don't know, the hard way, or I just learned it that it's very important to always explain. And I started to create a little slide deck with some examples and what UX is, so that I do not need to repeat it every time. And over time, in the last 6-7 years, I have an extensive slide deck, which is part of the customer-centric value creation framework, which I created together with my colleagues. And this evolved over time. I got a new article, read a new book, maybe Scott, your book or Tim's book. So, interesting new insights. And I read that article, was at a conference, talked to you, Jan, in a meetup. Okay. And it has, I'm constantly updating it, basically.
Nice.
And and so that's how we implemented it in the end. And everyone gets that introduction. First, you talk to your direct colleague, then to your team, then to your manager. So everyone who was not running away too fast at the beginning and still gets that introduction from me. So that's UX, that jobs to be done. I do not even use jobs to be done. I sometimes call it just use case. It's wrong for us, but they are used to that term, and it helps more to use a term that others understand than telling them you need to understand jobs to be done. No, they don't care. Jobs to be done, go away. So I don't like the new thing here. I call it a use case. That's fine. They know what a use case is. It's
whatever gets the job done, right? So
exactly. get them on board, and then you constantly explain and tell. You cannot even hear yourself anymore at some point. repeating, but yeah, so that's how I.
And as a UX designer, how can you, just slightly different question, but how can you somehow prove or showcase the value of the work you do to the business? How do you evaluate? Are you evaluated, or how would you evaluate other UX designers?
Ooh, now you want to know exactly which features in TeamViewer are based on the.
No, because I mean the issue, of course, is that it's hard to connect the work, which I mean I think we all agree is extremely valuable. I mean, we're all on board with how valuable this type of work is. But let's face it, in a company, I think often people will disregard this work, or in the end, it's very difficult to draw a straight line between that work and the success of a product, or some increase in profitability, or whatever it is. So how do someone in a position of UX put their work forward so that it's recognized?
So I guess you are referring to the famous ROI of UX, right? Return on investment of UX, which is hard to explain. That's how I called it in the past. I call it just value, and everyone contributes to the value. So the developers, UX, the research. So we want to create value for our customers. I cannot measure specific details of the product. They are coming from there. As I said, it's a collaborative effort. And I don't care if it's 90% of the super nice code that a developer created and the 5% that my research brought in, or it was that super nice insight, 90% of the new feature is coming from the research. I think it's hard to define that. And to be honest, I cannot. But if everyone understands it, and I just had a conversation this week and the PO confirmed that the insights helped him to be more confident what he is planning in the backlog as next steps. This helps. So the value and the appreciation also is if people come to you, approach you. So, can you tell that approach to my team as well? And how do you use that? How do you do the research? Can you do that for me? And stuff like this. I think I cannot, maybe others can. I cannot value that this is now so good because of UX. We can just say probably you cannot maybe even measure a specific feature because also some other circumstances change. The world changes. People have less money, more money, another competitor, whatever. So can you measure that? I don't know. But you can create value together. And if you get more customers and if they are satisfied, all from support department to the R&D department and the marketing department who does a good job, who explains the new feature pretty well because therefore they buy it. I think you cannot even measure this, but that's then the collaborative effort of everyone. There's maybe a weird, stupid answer, but I cannot.
I have a very bad pun that could we say that it's about people valuing the experience of working with
Yeah, maybe, yeah. So
UX has a great UX, right?
UX as needs a good UX with the rest of the organization.
I mean, when you do not need to explain why you do what you do anymore, or not that often anymore, that's already an achievement, right? And if you are, so I mean, I'm allowed to do that UX introduction since 3 years to all new R&D colleagues, which has been a lot in the last 3 years. That's already somehow probably makes sense. And you get a feedback.
But because I mean,
feedback, and I gave a talk in the company last at the end of last year, and the feedback was like, oh, so because not everyone is applying that right now yet, but many, but not all. Oh, this sounds good. Can you get more? Now we have another course on that, a training on the topic because the feedback was good. So this is for me the value. So it's not completely wrong what we are doing, and also other colleagues have an easier daily life because they do not need to explain too often, or they are approached more often than before. So yeah.
And if I may have also another question a bit in that direction, what would you advise a younger UX person who feels maybe he or she is not being listened to, or the proposals that are made? And I think we discussed this also, that, you know, sometimes you do a lot of research and it's not used, or it's not. So how can someone in that situation try and change that situation?
It's a very good question. So I have many students led through their internship in the meantime here at TeamViewer, and maybe what I'm telling them. So it's hard to insist or negotiate when the solution is already there, right? So just do the bridge. And when I started my career, maybe I would have just done the bridge and not have too much questions. I would say just do it. Don't ask. I had a conversation with another colleague, junior, some time ago. She was not allowed to do the research, so they told me not to do it, or we didn't have time, or this can happen anywhere. So don't ask for allowance. Just do it, and ask for what is it? Vergebung. Jan, help me.
Yeah, don't ask for permission. Ask for forgiveness.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Just do it, and I also did it. So I do not need to ask if I can do research. It's part of my job. So I just do it and bring the information. And we had another situation some time ago with a colleague. She was presenting a solution or an idea, and she got a lot of questions and feedback. Then we talked about it, and then we decided to bring in the need statements and the jobs we are going to solve and present it then. So, of course, an improved version. And she presented like, this is the job, these are the needs we are going to solve, this is my solution. She got way less comments and questions because it was clear. Again, jobs to be done is a good framework or a good tool to introduce stakeholders or whoever to a solution. It's already, I mean, you need it before you do the solution, and communicate that. And I had another example. I had a conversation last week for a feature. I presented it, and stakeholders said, no, we don't need that. That doesn't make sense. I knew from the research that this is a very important need, even quantified, and I convinced him. So it's not about I am right, he's wrong. That's not the case here. But because I was confident and I was able to explain my solution even to myself, I need to be able to explain why I'm doing what I'm doing. And with that base, so gather that insights, get the needs. So clarify the most important questions. Why are you doing that? What is the goal? What is the job? What are the users? What are their needs? And then do your stuff. You can do it pragmatically. Just write down the needs on your own if you don't have time for research. Go to your PO or your product manager and get a confirmation. So is this the needs we are going to solve? And if they confirm, if you're a junior, already fine. You at least internally you are right. You can be wrong outside because you internally had a wrong decision.
You identified the wrong needs or something.
Yeah, but do this and use it to do your stuff without you can use jobs to be done or something else. I don't care, but I would recommend jobs to be done and the needs and the jobs and the user or job performer. Clarify that pragmatically with your PO, or even better with some research, and then do your typical UI work. That would be my recommendation. It helps a lot.
Yeah, that's very, very nice. So maybe it's time to find a way of I feel like we need maybe another session. That's with most of the guests, so to be honest. So I think like I really liked how you showed this model, how you implemented the pragmatism that you bring to it. I think that's very that's a survival thing that you just need. I think because it's not about, if you would be dogmatic, I think you wouldn't be talking. So I like that a lot. Maybe to end in this sense, we always have this special question at the very, very, very end where you kind of open up again. So and of course you are from the more digital software side of it. So if you could I'll give you so Google always has kind of either a sketch or it has a quote or whatever for one day. It would be on the Google. It will be on Google. It would be, so everybody who visits Google would see that quote or that sketch. What would that be if you could choose?
Oh, I listened to so many episodes and I didn't prepare myself for that. Stupid guy me.
That's always the most difficult question, I think, for everybody. Like at the end,
what would I do?
Suddenly you have to be...
maybe just put a counter.
You can also either Google or you can put it into everybody who uses TeamViewer would see it for one day.
Right. So if it would be everybody in TeamViewer, I would move everyone to our publicly available surveys and jobs to done surveys to get even more insight. So that's what I'm actually trying to get done right now.
Okay.
Otherwise, something like, I don't know, a nice image with the message, don't be an asshole, something like this. So that's maybe
that's a good one.
That's a very good one. All right. Hey, Wolfram, thank you so much for doing this. And that concludes today's Product Quest podcast. So please send any comments or ideas for future shows to productquestpodcast@gmail.com, and see you next time.
If we were ever going to create a company, you're our UX person. I can tell you that. You're hired.